Hello, listeners, and welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing the famous Operation Raise the Colors and really what it was, what's happening, what its implications are, as well as rumors and speculation about it itself being a psyop and what the broader implications might be in leading to a UK civil war. So let's crack on right into it. So Operation Raise the Colors has begun sort of in mid-August of 2025, and it started off in Birmingham. Now, Birmingham is interesting because Birmingham is a city which really lost a lot of its, it used to be, I wouldn't call it the pride of Britain, but it used to be a very significant part of the UK. And it was industrial, big industrial, and it had enormous British firms which were operating out of it. And over the last couple of years, it has really seen a big decline. And famously right now, we've got the Birmingham BIM strikes going on right now, which are making it into quite a disgusting place, really. And so you can see, as well as Birmingham actually being a city that has an enormous foreign population, like many other large cities in the UK. So starting off in the north of Birmingham, in the suburb of Northfield, locals started putting up scores of the St. George's Cross and Union flags on lampposts as an act of patriotic expression. Now, I want to speak very quickly about the importance of the St. George's Cross being in there, and actually predominantly it is St. George's Crosses. Yes, there are Union Jacks, which are important, but the St. George's Cross is the really interesting thing, because St. George's Cross symbolizes a lot more than the Union Jack does. The Union Jack symbolizes the British Empire as a whole, whereas the St. George's Cross symbolizes England, but more specifically, it symbolizes the English people themselves. It itself is a Christian symbol featuring heavily from English mythology, and it's heavily ingrained within the English people. For example, I could call myself British, but I couldn't call myself English. I don't have the English blood within me. So the fact that this is the St. George's Cross that's being plastered everywhere is a real sort of interesting expression of this is our turf, considering the enormous encroachment which has happened on the English people and their identity within the last couple of years. It is no surprise that this has suddenly happened, but I'll speak about that more later. Now, this spontaneous display quickly sparked backlash from local council authorities, particularly the Labour-run councils. The Birmingham City Council responded by removing the flags and arguing, the typical bureaucratic, the eye-rolly route. They posed a safety risk, especially given ongoing upgrades to efficient LED street lighting and concerns about unimproved attachments to street furniture, which, look, if you ask me, that sounds like the most boring, mundane, elitist bureaucratic excuse you can come up with. It really does show a disconnect between the British people who are they're revolting and they're doing this. They can. It's public land. It's public property. These are their lampposts. They pay for it with the bloody tax dollars. And if they want to put up the flag of the nation that they're in, I think they very well should. And to then say, oh, actually, no, it's it's a safety hazard. That's ridiculous, in my opinion anyways. So, furthermore, the removal of these flags ignited national attention and galvanized a broader grassroots movement. The campaign, which was called, Operation Raise the Colors, spread organically via social media platforms with patriotic individuals across towns and cities, for example, very famously Tower Hamlets, Bradford, Newcastle, Norwich, Swindon, and also Canary Wharf is a famous area as well, that this happened in. And interestingly, these are all areas that have enormous foreign-born populations. Do you know that Canary Wharf, which was a place of a huge operation for this, is 29% British, white British, which is really interesting. And considering that was a place of such enormous action, I have some thoughts about that, and I'll speak about it later, but it's very interesting that this is, even with such a, let's say, a demographic push against them, demographics is not on the side of the white Englishman right now in some suburbs of London, yet somehow he's still able to make this work, and it's very interesting. And it's no surprise that all the councillors as well, I was reading something about it as well, all the councillors were, say, Muslim, or etc. It's no wonder they wanted to take down the St. George's flag flying in Canary Wharf and elsewhere. So, councils, of course, such as, this is the mayor of Tower Hamlets Council, Lutfur Rahman, announced he would remove the St. George's flags attached to council property, citing maintenance and safety concerns, which is super interesting because when the very, very same thing happened with Palestinian flags, so now it's the Muslim community's flags, no one had a peep, and I guarantee you the mayor didn't say a thing, and he didn't. This is such an obvious case of two-tier enforcement of some rules and not, and a desperate attempt by these councils to hold on to their power, their own ethnic identity. They are marking this area off and saying, no, this is for us, this is for our own ethnic area. And now it's being reclaimed by the people of England, by the native Britons, and they themselves are putting these flags here, and it's scaring the shit out of them. So the wider implications of this movement as a whole is that it is a really interesting example of a movement growing and a sudden outburst of decades of suppressed nationalism. Now, to think about this rationally for a second, most Western nations haven't experienced significant nationalism in a very long time. It's really been suppressed, especially in countries like the UK, Australia, Canada, etc., where they're told our past is shameful, that our flag means bad things to multiple people. We shouldn't be flying about it. And look, guys, look at the Nazis. Look how evil they were. They were nationalistic, so you can't be nationalistic either. And that's really the argument that's been portrayed to a lot of people. And the fact that this is happening, and the fact that this has spread so quickly, lightning speed, is, well, it's actually quite white-pilling for the right, because it shows that even in areas where they do not make the demographic majority, in areas where it would seem like they lost all hope and all control, things are still able to happen that restore English identity, and they can happen quickly. Now, if I were a globalist, I don't know, left-wing authority right now in power in Britain, I would be scared. I'd be scared out of my shit, man, because this is a bad sign for any upcoming violence in the UK, which may or may not. I can't guarantee it will happen. I can't guarantee it will not happen, but it may happen. So there's been an interesting rumor that's been circulating around on the right, and it's that this whole movement is actually a lot more subversive than it seems, and that the arms of the state are far more deeper than we ever thought they were before. So it's an idea saying that this Operation Raise the Colours has been a way to release the pressure on a movement against the establishment in a way that is harmless, in a way that doesn't hurt them, in a way that doesn't repeat the violence of the Southport riots, where they have to call in police officers from off duty, where they have to use not everything, but most of the things which a state has at its disposal to subdue the population. So this harmless, non-effectual gesture, which is really just counsel against people, it's very interesting, and some people have been suggested that it's a psyop and a part of the broader idea of a controlled opposition, which is sort of the idea that mainstream or liberal establishments have been using for the last, oh my goodness, I don't know how long, but a long time. Neocons or moderate conservatives, the traditional type of conservatives, as a form of controlled opposition against what they're doing, which don't actually ever achieve anything and prove themselves to be blundering and fail so that they can keep on staying in power. It's the sort of idea of the uniparty where you've got multiple different options, but in reality they all lead into one, and this is one big idea of, neoliberalism, neoconservatism, globalism, liberalism, etc. And I actually don't think that this is true. Not in this instance anyways. I think if you really think about this, Operation Raise the Colours is a grassroots movement. And I know many psyops are, and that's literally what they're designed to be, especially if they're black level. The fact that this movement not only spread like wildfire, but the fact that it was so punished by the authorities were right on their tail. But even better, the thing that makes me believe that this is even less of a psyop is Keir Starmer announced he had to make a speech about how much he loved the flag, how much he loved the UK's flag, and although he tried bringing women's football into it, which, I mean, come on, you're a Labour government, you can't not do that, I still think it's absolutely fascinating how you are able to get a government who really hates the flag, they hate your people, and they hate your stuff. They hate your identity, and they hate nationalism. To force them to do this is an act of pretty much sheer political desperation from the Labour Party right now. And if anything, it'll just accelerate its own collapse, as really the Labour Party will eat itself, because this might as well be another sign that the Labour Party is moving further to the right. And I don't think they can survive there. I don't even think they can survive on the left. This might really be, we might really see the Labour Party and Conservative Party go on by the next election. But I digress. The point that I'm trying to make overall by talking about this, and I know this has been a sort of short episode today, is importantly it shows how widespread and quickly action, particularly nationalist action on the right, can spread across the West. This is the first time where there's been large-scale mass demonstrations in one Anglosphere Western nation on the side of the right. widespread grassroots from the people with the majority of the people supporting it, and it's everywhere. I think this is really interesting, and it really makes you think about what the future might be. So some people have been suggesting that the UK might be heading to a civil war, which, as some have even suggested further, could become something like a Yugoslav wars type ethnic skirmishing. Now, as much as I hope that doesn't happen, because that would be absolutely horrible, it is possible. It is possible. And the fact that so many people, particularly young men, which, yes, are predominantly on the right, were not just able to, but inspired to mobilize so quickly to paint and hoist flags everywhere, a nationalist outburst so quickly spread like wildfire, really. Took over the UK's internet for a couple days. It's interesting, and it really does show how, if conflict were to actually begin, I think it could actually accelerate. So how conflict, like a civil war, would begin as a catalyst would happen, like in a big event. It would spread quickly, and then there'd be riots, violence, and then organization. And I think this could definitely be, like Operation Raise the Colors, the fact that it itself is an organization, it's an operation, shows that the right can organize to achieve things. And look what they've done. They've had success. We've had success. We got the British government, who hates nationalism, to say how much they like the St. George's Cross, the symbol of the English people. And that's a win. It might be a small win because, look, he did channel into women's football in the end. But it's a win. And the right will remember, the UK right will remember, that if they organise, if they do action, it can work. And worse for the authorities, worse for the establishment, it can spread, and they will win. So to finish up on this one, I think I'll be watching the events over the next couple weeks very intensely. I think the UK is going to be a really, really interesting place to be. So we'll definitely see about that, and I'll make a future video about it. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. You guys tell me in the comments what you think about this, whatever your thoughts are. And well, thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.